Welcome to the Ripple Effect by the Alliance. We are committed to raising the frequency of our planet. We'll discuss hot topics, share practical tools and sacred frequencies to reveal the magic in your life. Come laugh, cry, and have fun with us.
Welcome, everyone, to the Ripple Effect podcast by the Alliance. We're so excited to have you here. We have a really big topic today that we want to chat about. And we have three ladies here, obviously, you can see. And our topic that we want to dive into is related specifically to the gender gap when you have men and you have women, whether it's in the workplace or in life, and we're going to chat about that and how we can combat that and what comes with that. And yeah, so we're going to dive into that. But before I do that, there's a really, I won't say Hannah came up with a really cool term. And I want you to kick this off, Hannah, because you, you'll explain it so much more eloquently than I can when it comes to the gender gap and your term for that. So, and what we want to dive into within the context of the podcast episode.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about how when a woman has a certain level of expertise, it doesn't matter how high or how much that expertise is or how many years she's been accumulating the knowledge and becoming an expert in a subject. But when there's a man around, unfortunately, there's our credibility kind of goes down some notches. And I called it the gender gap of credibility, where we as women have to work doubly hard to prove ourselves. And even if we're expert in a matter, if we say something, if there's a man around, we can be questioned in a way that makes us kind of wobble in our certainty sometimes. Because, these questions come from a place of, dear, or a little bit condescending. And it can make us wobble, even if we're within us completely certain of what we know to be true. And we have the knowledge and we have the expertise and we have the experience. And yet there's that nano bit of doubt that can creep in that makes us kind of tentative or backpedal. And I know it's happened to me quite a few times where I've been questioned about something, and the question comes so strongly that I begin to doubt whether what I'm saying is true.
Yeah, and that was so like this is a big topic, right? And it's a hot topic, and it's something that comes up a lot, and it goes into like and everything. But what came up for our conversation and why we wanted to bring this here is because it goes right down to like how you value yourself and how you see yourself and how you like trust and believe in yourself. And I have also experienced that, and so has Stacia. So when we have these offline conversations, and then we're like, we have to bring this to the podcast because I think people hear, the gender gap, and they automatically assume like pay gap, or someone's getting a job over somebody else. Like they go right to that rather than this happens within your social group. It can happen within your families, and you might not even realize how much of an impact that's had on you until you get into like a conversation at a dinner party. I think that's what happened with you, right, Hannah? It was like, holy shit. And I've had the same thing happen, and we're going to share experiences with you guys, but it really makes you doubt yourself, almost to the point where you're like, you go home and Google the thing after you're like, I knew I was right. Why didn't I like stand up for myself or believe in myself? And it also made us question, like, would we act that same way if it was another saying this to us as opposed to a man? And how, and we're not saying all men are like this, but some conversations that come up, it can be feel condescending or like we're being challenged. And we wanted to share our experience and then how you can overcome that and combat that on your own and in your own situations. Because like we say, this is something that can happen daily in your life. It's not just about.
Yes. And I just want to say a caveat that all three of us love men.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that was part of our
Love
conversation too. We but
and it's not, this episode is definitely not a let's bash the men, and
no,
it's let's
it's not.
find a way to stay empowered regardless of who questions us. And it's about also, I think, yeah, it's about ourselves more than the men.
The
It
other
just happens
person.
to be that men usually are the ones that question women, right? If we're with girlfriends, sometimes even our girlfriends will question, but I think we have a certain level of trust that we can say, no, you silly goose, of course I'm right. And we don't like go into our shell.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's also a way of how we were brought up.
Yes,
But
that's exactly what I was going to say. It goes to like between maybe how a man and a woman, like a child, when they're children, obviously a girl and a boy are raised, and again, not everybody's raised the same way, but the norms that a lot of us have have placed that conditioning on us, and we're getting away from all that.
yes. And Stacia, you had a situation happen to you just yesterday. Do you want to tell us about that since it's fresh in your mind?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But before I talk about that, the fact that you brought up the conditioning, with the gender gap of credibility, it doesn't always have to be men that are making you lose your credibility. It is the way that you're raised, And as women, we don't want to make people feel bad. And if somebody's coming at you with this energy and, you kind of, you do hold back, or when you're not doing the work, you do hold back and you don't stand your ground and you let them just think whatever they want to think, or, even when you're right. So I think that I had two relationships that were polar opposites, where one guy, like, I just always let him be right when he wasn't. And then the next relationship, I was like, I am so right. I will die on this podium right now to prove it. So I had these extremes because I didn't have that, I didn't learn that in my upbringing. I learned that women need to know their roles and you don't stand out. And so that is really important as far as, especially when it comes to gender. It's like we were just conditioned that way that we grew up. But yesterday I had some problems with my vehicle and I knew exactly what the problem was. But the gentleman, I will not name the place that I took it to, the gentleman was like, oh yes, I'll look at it. We'll take care of you. That's how we left the phone call. So I get there and he basically is trying to explain to me how to open my hood. And I'm like, wow, dude, no, we're past that point because I've already told you the part that I need. And you don't think that I can pop a hood open. So, but I just let it go. And quickly he said, he could not fix the problem, which I knew as soon as he said, this is a button where you push it. But, I think too that old Stacia, I would have like, oh, like I wouldn't have even acknowledged like, oh, I think I know what this problem is. And I just would have had people waste my time, because why would I want to tell them that they're wrong? So, yeah.
Right. But in this case, you kind of told him, right? It's like, well, that's what I told you.
Right.
And the hood won't open and we need the part. And that's what we need to.
Yeah. I was like, oh no, I know how to pop the hood. My secondary latch is broken. That's what it's called, sir. Secondary latch.
I love it. And, going back to the way we were raised, like, for example, I don't know what you guys were told when you were little, but I was once pulled aside by my mom when I was around 14, and I had done something that was either seemed intelligent or I don't know what it was, but my mom pulled me aside and said, you can't let men know that you're that smart.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I remember it as if it was yesterday. It was so like, you have to not show them that you're smart, because you're gonna, and she didn't really go into detail, but the bottom line was that I could very easily make a man feel bad about himself.
Intimidated. I've been told I'm intimidating. And then I was like, oh, I better not do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that too. And even times where like I look back and think there was times when like the opposite of like I was right and not wanting to say anything, or knowing you already knew the answer, and then but making them feel like, oh, they taught you that, or oh wow, like that, really, I didn't know that, but really, like, no, I already knew that. It's just like appeasing their ego or something, but it's certainly not how I do it now. But yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah. But let me ask you, Sarah, in your current relationship, do you hold back?
No, I feel like, especially when before I like started doing my own like mindset and self-discovery, like Stacia said, I went to the opposite extreme, and it was like I wanted to be like, here I am, I'm right, don't fuck with me, like I don't try and be better than me. And it was like that obviously didn't have a good impact on the relationship right off the get-go. But I went to that other extreme for a bit, because I was like, I had that feeling of like, no, I don't want to be silenced. But it was so interesting, because there were situations where I would still hold back, because like a conversation with my older brother, for example, he's very knowledgeable and well versed in so many things. So if he was saying something and I thought, oh no, maybe this way, I would hold back, because I would think, well, what if I'm wrong? Or what if I'm not right? What if that 1% of me that thinks maybe it's not right? Or even if it was just a difference of opinion, it was like, but his voice is louder than mine. So like, if I try to say something, that's going to be louder. So I'll be quiet. So then it was like, oh, I can be loud in my relationship and be heard there, because then I was holding back in other places, right?
So what, for example, Stacia, you in this new, you're exploring in your relationship. Yeah. And so how are you showing up?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Funny enough, I think I'm showing up very much authentic to myself, because I feel comfortable to express express what I'm feeling, and and share things that have happened. We have really similar backgrounds with, both our fathers were alcoholics. His father's passed away, and it's just very interesting because that's the kind of things that I don't normally share. It's because then people want to ask you questions, and it's like, oh, I don't really want to talk about it. So, but yeah, I think that, you especially have helped give me a lot of the tools that I use to really know when I'm starting to turn down the light, and then when you're not expressing yourself, it starts coming out in really wacky ways where you can get very, subliminally angry. That's my go-to. I'm like, I'm just so angry. I don't know why. But yeah, it's been really interesting to see the difference, that I'm not, oh yes, everything you say is correct. And I'm also not like, no, this is exactly what it is. And I know. I'm just kind of just right where I am. And it feels good to be, in that comfortable state of not having to prove anything. So.
Yes. And that's where we aim to get to, right? To a place where you don't have to continuously be proving yourself and working so hard at getting approval or getting recognition or getting respect. Right? It's become, as we do the work, I feel for myself, and I am not in relationship right now, and I haven't been in a long time, because I've chosen to stay single and not engage in a relationship, because I felt that, at least in the past, I don't know that now I'm that way still. I'm just so used to being on my own and not having to call anyone and tell them where I am or when I'm coming or where I'm going. And it's just gotten into a very comfortable state. But before, I was just so concerned about getting myself in the same relationship, different face kind of situation, where I would repeat the same mistakes all over again. So I wanted to be sure that I'd done the work and that I would come in from a place of, from a peaceful place.
Yeah.
Not from a bellicose place of, I have to prove myself. And if you come at me with judgment or criticism, I am just going to barrel through and flatten you out, because I will not allow anyone to come at me again. And I will not allow any kind of abuse or any kind of, and then it becomes, I feel that it becomes very aggressive, because it's like you have to just, and at this point, I don't know that I would come out aggressive. I'm not actively looking. Sometimes I say I am, but then I'm like, but not really. I think about it and I'm like, it's funny because I'll see somebody in relationship like my cousin or my parents or somebody that's usually they bicker. And then do is I go and lie in the middle of my bed and do snow angels.
I got all this room to myself.
Exactly. So, but there's a level of aggression that starts to come out when we've been the recipients of this judgment or this questioning or this invalidating, that we're like, I've had enough. It's like, I am going to stand up and shout from the rooftop if I have to. And I'm going to shine and I'm going to be seen. And then it just goes the other way. It's like the pendulum that swings completely the other way. And sometimes, I mean, I'm for expressing ourselves fully, authentically, honestly, but from that place of centeredness. Because when we're just doing it to prove ourselves, it also backfires.
Yeah, that's what I was like. It's like it's a prove it. It's like I want to prove it. I want to prove I'm right. I want to prove I'm better. I want to prove I'm smart. And like I said, I've been there. I've been where Stacia was, where it was like it's that opposite extreme where it comes out like that, and it's not beneficial to anybody, including ourselves, because it's like, well, now you proved it, but you possibly made the other person feel like exactly the way you didn't want to feel.
Yes.
And it's like, what's the point of doing it that way?
Yeah, exactly. And that's when we get, so I've seen a lot online about men feeling like, oh, well, women don't need us and blah, blah, blah. And there's so much depression and there's so much, high rates of suicide amongst men and all these things that are going on. But it makes me question, because I just feel that we as women have endured a shit ton of stuff and a shit ton of abuse and a shit ton of invalidation through the generations. It's not just us. I feel that I'm older than you guys, but I feel that these couple generations are the ones in the middle, from like my mom was like my grandma, let's say. She was taken out of elementary school because she had beautiful legs. 3rd grade elementary school. Okay. She got taken out of school because she had beautiful legs.
Oh my God.
You know?
That's crazy.
And she really was such an incredible woman. She was widowed when she was around 38 years old. She had 4 children, 3 teenagers. My mom was 17. Her sister was 15. Her brother was 13. And she had a week-old baby. Literally, she'd given birth the week before. And the next Sunday, my grandfather had a massive heart attack and died. And so she was left with a silver store and 4 kids and a week-old baby, like breastfeeding. My mom had to step up and become head of household in that moment and take over, because her mom just couldn't handle it. But through all that, and my grandmother never married again or anything. She was completely devoted to her kids, and she learned to speak English, and she had her silver store, and she was absolutely independent, and she took care of her children, and she traveled, and she went to Europe, and she went to a bunch of places. And it was really wonderful to see that someone who'd been really limited by her family, that she was able to still have a really wonderful life. But those generations where, like, she couldn't go traveling by herself. She had to go with another woman, with her sister, my aunt, or with her, with someone that they could go together. And just yesterday, I saw a TikTok of this guy, and I cannot remember his name. I'll go find him and let you know on the comments. But It's this guy on TikTok that did sort of like a little, I guess it was a poll, but he did it in a video way for TikTok. And he asked these women, if there were no men on earth, what would you do? And you know,
Oh,
the answer was 99% of the women, I would go out for a walk at midnight.
wow.
I would go out jogging after dark. I would go out at night to look at the stars. I would lay down, look at the stars, and close my eyes.
Wow.
I would go out and at night, walking at night or running or jogging or something, but they all were like, I would go out on my own. I would travel on my own. I would be out on my own. And it just hit me so hard because at my age, I am here visiting my parents and staying with them for a while. And at 10 o'clock, when I'm done doing my stuff, I want to go walk my dog. And my dad gets up, gets dressed if he's in bed, and he will go out with me. He will not allow me to go out by myself to
Yeah.
walk my dog. And I get so crazed. But he's just like, I'm not going to let you. I just don't understand how men, and I shared about this thing that I saw, and he goes, I just don't understand men. I just don't. And he's like all flustered and because obviously he's one of the good guys, right?
Yes.
And he just doesn't get it. And he goes, well, men get robbed too, and then they get assaulted too, and things happen to men, but it just, the proportion is higher for women,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because we're just like not as strong. And that's why there's a big movement of learning self-defense for women.
That's so weird. It's Stacia and I were just talking about that before we hopped on live because I said, well, we know Hannah's psychic, but we went for I went for a walk alone on the waterfront. Like there's this path and it's kind of secluded. I've never been afraid, but there was this man, it was really quiet. Like normally it's busy and it was around 5 o'clock. Everybody must have been eating supper. And this man, he looked, I don't know, something in me was like, freaked me out. And I was actually messaging Andrew, my spouse, and saying like, there's this creepy guy. I hope I don't get raped. Like my mind went right to that. Like I got really freaked out and I've never been afraid going down that path. But it was so quiet. It was just him and he immediately started following behind me. And I felt scared. I'm like, if I send you this, it means call 911. And like, by the time I got to the end of the path, there was this other weird guy and he was like handing me a pamphlet. I'm like, what is going on tonight? But as soon as you said that, I was like, that resonated so much with me because I grew up with that, right? It was like, you can't go out by yourself. You're a girl. You can't do that by yourself. I couldn't, like I had an opportunity in Girl Guides to go to New York City. Actually it was New York State. It wasn't even New York City. And my parents wouldn't let me go. I still bug them about it today. And they're like, you're alive because you didn't go on that trip. I'm like, no, it's like, but that's how I was raised to like fear that. And a man keeps you safe. Right. So there's so much, again, that conditioning there and that poll just shows you like people, it's a thing. Women would feel safer. And again, it's not all men are like that, but obviously there's enough to make us feel it's either what we're seeing or hearing or how we've been conditioned.
Yes. So what is it? What is it, right? Because how do we break out of that?
Yeah.
How do we break out of that? And I think that has to be, in my opinion, and I don't know, you guys tell me, I think it has to be a joint venture between men and women.
Yes, because the thing is, as much as we can be conditioned or see things or learn things, it same goes for them too, right? So it's not like men are ingrained, just born that way. And like it's like that they've also been taught like don't cry and be strong and you gotta be smart, and it's like, okay, so if they're learning that and we're learning be passive, well, at some point the two are going to come together.
Right. We got to come to an agreement, because what's happened now, I feel that before, like when my grandmother's time, right, the roles were absolutely clear.
Yes, they were.
Women stayed home, took care of the kids, had kids, took care of the kids, took care of the family, and they were the head of the household.
Yeah.
They were the CEO of the home. And they were not, I don't know how many women actually knew how powerful they were and how the abundance came through them,
Mhm.
like through their husbands, but the ones who were creating the abundance were them. And that's
Yeah.
the part that I think we need to really revisit. And that's what I was telling you guys about, that I love about Judaism, because in Judaism, they really honor the woman as the matriarch and as the like the glue that holds it all together, right? And they're very big on family, which in Mexico we are too. So for me, it's kind of like, and it's very clear. The roles are very, very clear. But then it started going like, I read something, and I don't want to go into any like conspiracy theories and all this BS and stuff that just makes my blood boil. But I read recently that what happened is that they realized, a certain person realized that women weren't paying taxes, and wouldn't it be convenient to have women start working so that they could also contribute and pay taxes? So they kind of started killing the family unit, right? Because they were like, we want to get more money out of these peons, and like we're only getting half of what we could get. So let's send these women to work. And then we bought the pill, and I think it was the red pill of the Matrix, right? It's like the wrong pill. And we got the wrong pill and thought, oh, this is so great, and we're liberated and all that. And I've never been a person that has been pro women's lib. I just found it so stupid, right? I just found it
Me too. Station might be different, but
Well,
yeah.
you run into so many extremes, and that's what
I think
makes
that's it.
That's the energy that kind of is very putting off, is the extreme of it. It's like, well,
don't open my door for me, and women get offended, and I'm like we're the gentlemen.
Yeah.
I need a guy to open
Chivalry,
the door
please.
today.
I
Like,
beg of
I
you.
have all these bags, and I'm like trying to, I remember being pregnant with my daughter, and I was 8 months pregnant, and I fell outside of the college where I was taking voice lessons. I was gonna go meet my parents and my husband at a restaurant in Miami, and it was downtown Miami, right outside Miami-Dade Community College. I walked out, I twisted my ankle, and I fell. So I'm on the floor with a stomach this big, because I didn't look pregnant until I was 8 months pregnant. I was a size 6 until I was 8 months pregnant. But then at the 8th month, I don't know what happened. And I just went like, and busted out, right? So I have this big belly, and I'm on the floor, and I'm asking people for help. And I'm like, listen, I'm pregnant and I fell. Can you help me up? No one helped me up.
What?
20 people must have gone by. Women, men, people, young people.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody helped me up. I had to crawl up to the steps and then grab onto the handlebar and like pull myself up and hobble to my car and drive myself to the restaurant. And when I got there, my husband came out and got me out of the car and helped me hobble into the restaurant. And then they had to like figure out, I think we left the car. I don't know whatever happened after that, but I couldn't just go any further. I was just like, nobody helped me.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
Crazy, right? But I feel that there's no sense of civics. I don't know. And there used to be a civics class when I was little in middle
Yeah, there
school,
used to be.
where they taught you how to be a good citizen.
Yeah.
Like literally,
Right.
there was a class that taught you how to be a good person. Because I guess humans need to be taught to be nice.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay. This reminds me of, you guys are gonna laugh. It reminds me of an episode of the Golden Girls. And it might be, I even have my Golden Girls mug right now. But
Which magic
Blanche.
is better, by the way. I love that.
yes, see there.
I love that
didn't
detail.
plan
Yeah.
that. Drinking my tea from my throat. So Blanche, for anybody who watches the Golden Girls, I know it's an old reference, but I'm just showing how this goes back. Like, so this is a show from the 80s. And there was an episode where Blanche dates this guy, and he hadn't dated for a long time. Like, his wife had passed, and then he dated her. So he didn't know how to date her. So she felt like, oh, does he not really like me? Because he didn't pay for dinner, and he wanted to split on the bill, and then he wouldn't kiss her goodnight. And like, he was trying to let her take the lead, but then he also wants to take the lead. And it was like this blurred line of like, what should I do as the man, and what should you do as the woman? And I'm like, that's sad. Like, that was the 80s, and we still have that today, right? Where it feels like, we want to be strong, independent women, but we still want to be wooed and romanced and courted and dated. Courted's a very dated word, but you know what I mean? We want to feel special. So I feel like it's such a big topic, right? Because it, like, the lines get so blurred, and it, like we said, it bleeds into everything. It bleeds into dinner conversations, how we act with our spouse, how we, show up at work, how we have a conversation. I think the dinner one would drive me crazy. Like, it's one thing with your spouse. It's a learning experience with your spouse. You go through ups and downs, and you learn how to handle these situations. And if you're doing like the work like we do, you learn new ways to approach things. But the dinner conversation thing reminds me of, like, now I'm going to use another data reference, but Seinfeld, how George Costanza would act. And it's like that thinking, like, because you don't have that opportunity to go to that person later. Like, if it's a brief conversation with someone that you've just met and they make you feel really small, it's not like you can reinvent that situation and get all those people back together and be like, okay, so here's what I should have said, or here's what I should have done. It's like you had that moment, and it's like try not to beat yourself up, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, because those moments can be like, I had an opportunity to test my ability to, use my voice or stand up for myself. And then if you don't, then you're beating yourself up. It's like, it's okay. Believe me, those opportunities are going to come up again.
Yeah. And Stacia, you're like the queen of self-defense now.
I'm getting there.
She is. That's what I said. I'm like, she was talking about her. So Stacia, please say it, because I'm going to botch it. Thank you. I botched it earlier today. Andrew's like, what are you saying? And I was saying, like, that you must feel more confident with that, right? Like, so would you feel confident going out for a walk at 10 o'clock?
Oh,
I mean,
for sure.
I got
because
this. I can take you down.
Yeah. Now when I see people, I'm looking at them like, where would I grab them to knock them down? Like, oh, look at you just leaving your little arm out like that. I could just spin you on the ground right now.
We need to do an episode where you teach us techniques.
Yes, we need that. Definitely.
Yeah. But it definitely, I think, mind and body was a really big theme for me this year. And I just started getting a lot of, downloads, for lack of a better word. And I really needed to connect mind and body. And, I do a lot of stuff, but I do it very intentional. And when I do all these insane workouts, it's almost like I'm in a meditative workout.
Yeah.
And so it's really been very, very helpful for my mindset. And I feel like, Sarah was, she felt uncomfortable, and I feel like I've been able to be really uncomfortable, but yet confident that I'm okay, and that I'm in control of my situation. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a state to be in. I've been considering doing Krav Maga, which is like the Israeli, like psyops or whatever it's called. It's like the operatives from Israel that are the military operatives. That it's like super, like it's different than jujitsu. I think it's a little bit more violent. Goes along with my personality. But I was thinking of doing that when I was living in Philly, and then everything happened. I sold my house and all that, and then I got into pickleball, which has nothing to do with self-defense. It is mind body, but it's totally not. It's like even the name pickleball.
If you get attacked, you're like, okay, let's have a match. Whoever wins. If you win, you
I'll
can
play
finish attacking me.
pickleball.
Oh my gosh.
So Sarah, you and I have got to get on with it.
I know. And one thing I was doing before COVID, was boxing. And I really liked that because, it was giving me stamina, and there was more cardio in that when I went into it than I expected. Like we had to skip. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember skipping being fun. And you had to skip for like, I think it was like 5 minutes, something that felt really long when you were doing it. And I'm like, I remember skipping all recess. Why does this feel like a workout? I used to do this as a kid. I used to look forward to skipping. What happened to my body? But it gets you in really good shape. And then you're also like you're doing the muscle stuff too, and learning to fight. So it's a good way to get out aggression and stuff. Now that I'm allowed to enter buildings again, I might take that back up.
Yeah. I'm looking to jujitsu around here. There's karate in my club, but anyway,
Yeah, that always sounded fun to me too. Yeah,
I did it when I was little, and I know some of the moves still. They could, when you do it when you're young, they kind of stay with you, right? So I know I could go back into it very, very easily, but I feel like I would want more like what Stacey's doing, so that I could be out at night.
yes,
and feel, I don't know, because like people carry guns. I know some friends of mine that carry guns, and I just guns, and I don't know. I don't like.
I'm terrified. I'm like,
Yeah.
That's fine if you want one, but I just, I've never even touched one. They terrify me.
Well,
I'm afraid of accidentally shooting myself, to be honest.
Right.
Oh,
And I'm thinking they're gonna just take that gun out from my hand, and they're
we're gonna have a
shoot me with it.
retreat, and Stacia's gonna teach us self-defense and how to use a gun.
And how to use a gun.
Ourselves.
Well, I mean, I started learning how to use a gun when I was little. So at least that was something that, my parents were smart. Well, my mom didn't like it, but they were smart about it. And I was a good child. So I was never doing stupid things with the guns. But I think nowadays kids don't have that opportunity to learn things correctly. And there's a lot of shenanigans going on, and people, even older people, they don't know what they're doing, and they should not have any weaponry, but I do enjoy shooting.
Yeah.
I would enjoy shooting at a target.
Yeah.
I was exposed to my father was a hunter, and the killing of animals, and it's just oil and water.
It turned you off.
Yeah.
Right. But you know what? Going back to the subject of like the gender differences. That was another thing. Like growing up, my brothers learned how to shoot a gun, but I didn't. Like, I'm a girl. I don't need to know how to shoot a gun. Right. So it's yeah, man.
Yeah,
Back far.
it goes really far. So where are we going to draw the line? And where do we say, you know what, it's okay if I stay home and raise the kids?
Yeah. I think that's a big question too, right? Like it's not just about, oh, like it's not taking it to that other extreme where you have to be like, you have to take on that other role just to counteract this gender gap, right?
Right.
It's finding what feels good for you.
Yes.
And
you're
not, and taking the shame or guilt around it away. Like, again, I feel like it's become, there's such a blurred line between it all that people are like,
Yeah.
well, when should I speak up, or when should I do this? And what if I want, like, it's like, step back. Let's just step back for a minute and look at like, what do you actually want? And I think that's something, and again, as women, we don't do, is like, what do we actually want? Like, do you ever sit there and say, like, I know we do, but do you actually sit and say, like, what do I want? What would make me happy? As opposed to what I feel like I have to do? What should I do?
And all the obligations and the perception of things, right? And now it's like, it's almost impossible to run a household with one salary. So then it's almost like women feel that they don't have a choice. But then I see so many women, and I was one of them. We had a job. We were the keepers of the house. So I had to, after work, I had to come and cook. I had to come and clean. I had to do laundry. I had to do everything. And in my household, when I was married, it was like I would clean the kitchen and go upstairs. By the time I came down, the kitchen was a mess already, because there was also respect for what I did. And I know how to create boundaries and say, fuck no, or say, okay, well, I'm leaving, or throw the soup on their head when they deserved it. And I was just like, oh, okay. And I became what I call gived out. Like I did so much that it got to the point where I had more left to give.
Yeah. So maybe for the listeners, we could give them like some tips, because I imagine a lot of people probably feel this way, and maybe we could share like some ways to set those boundaries in place, or because you can't demand respect, right? Like, and like something you said, like you go upstairs and come back down and it was a mess again. It's like they had no respect, but it's like, what can we share with the listeners so that they can start to build up that respect for what they're doing in their household? I know for me, it's showing respect for my spouse and what he does too, right? And not playing the blame game, or, oh, I'm right, or, I did more than you. And ironically, we had our meditation was somewhat around this last night, right? And it's like, we're always working on this. Like the things that we're bringing you is like, we don't just, it's not like a one and done. We're constantly building and working on what we're doing. And we're constantly testing ourselves in things that, even today, I remember I came up with Andrew and like looking back on how I handled it. Previously, I would have handled it totally different. It would have been, I have to be right. I have to show that you didn't do what you're supposed to, and somehow have a prove it moment, right? As opposed to now where I was like, just excited. You picked up Kleenex. This is great. Thank you. You did it. You came home with Kleenex. And I'm excited. And just the respect for like, because that it starts with like the respect we want to receive starts with like the respect that we're giving others, and really look at like how you're reacting. And I know for a lot of people if we're getting to that point where we feel disrespected, or we feel overwhelmed, or we feel like we're stuck doing everything, it's like we just want to go on strike and be like, fuck everybody, do it yourself. I'm done. You know, do your own laundry, do your own this, do your own that. I'm done. And what we want to help everybody listening is to avoid getting to that point of like complete overwhelm, because then we're not, you know, we're not filling that gap. We're just like, we're going from one extreme to the other.
Yeah. And it's not bringing any joy to anyone.
No.
It's like, and it ends up in a mess, right? And usually it ends up, and if you're married, it usually ends up in divorce, right? It's like somebody just gets so fed up of the whole situation, and it's like, now I'm really done. I'm over and done with. And nobody needs to get to that point.
No.
And I know for a fact so many marriages could be saved just from understanding the way that we all process information and the way that we all would like to be loved and what we're expecting to receive. Like if I had the information now that I have now when I was married, I can guarantee you that I would still be married.
Yeah.
And that's why when people come to me and they're in a difficult situation, the first thing I said is stop thinking that you're out. Stop thinking that, you know, it's like you made a commitment and it can work. Because the thing is that people get out who don't do the work, right? They get out of a situation and you get a same relationship, different face
Yes.
over again.
Yes.
And might at the beginning get the butterflies, but it's going to get to that exact same point
Yes.
where you walked out
Yeah.
with the next relationship if you don't do the work. So why bother? If you want to go through the whole thing all over again, okay, go ahead. But if you don't, there's always a new way of reinventing your relationship. And the magnificent part of it is that you don't need your spouse to be in agreement with you.
Mm.
It takes only one person to change everything.
Yes.
And it may seem like a miracle, but if you change, literally everything changes. And we've seen it, right? You guys you're living proof of that.
Yeah. I've seen it. And it's funny. I read an article about that, and it was a husband and wife, and they were at that point where they were just both at their wits' end. And the husband decided, okay, every morning, I think he had a counselor or something like that. And every morning when he woke up, he would ask her, what can I do to make your day better today? And when he first started asking her, she would give him so much sass. She'd be a bitch. She'd list off like a whole like list of things like do this, do that. And he'd be like, okay. And then the next morning he'd be like, what can I do to make your day better? And he kept doing this every morning till finally one day, he asked her, and she just broke down crying. And she's like, oh my God. She's like, I see now. She's like, I know what I've been doing. I know how I've been acting, but he changed first. And then that gave her the opportunity to he wasn't telling her, well, I'm asking you this every day, so you should be like acting this way too, or you should be nicer. I'm trying to be nicer. And it was just, he didn't put any expectation on her. It was like, he's like, I'm going to do my best to make her day as positive as I can. I'll do my best to do the things she asked. And every morning it was the same question. And then finally she just had this like epiphany of like, holy shit, like I'm part of this too, right? Like it's not just you. And their whole relationship changed after that. And yeah, it's
if there was magic at one point, believe me, the magic is still there. It's probably just still asleep.
Yeah, right. And you know, I've gone through that in my own relationship. And if I had, it was because since I've been with Andrew, I went on my mindset and self-discovery and all of that lovely journey. And so there was a time when it like neither of us really knew, like there was tension there, right? And it was that competitiveness and just resentment happening. And because I went on that journey and I started to realize, like that woman, like, holy shit, I'm the one, like I've had the relationships on repeat, right? Like it's not there. It'd be pretty coincidental if there was all these situations happening and I'm the common denominator. And I was the one who was changing first in that situation, right? And it's that feeling of, because we could have said, well, fuck this, let's just end it. But we decided, it wasn't even a decision. It was just like, it just sort of happened. Like I started to act different and talk different and take baby steps. And I would get resistance from Andrew and like the same type of thing, like the negativity in that. I'm like, okay, I can't force this on him. Like I got to integrate this, then he'll start to integrate it. And that's what happened. Like I changed then because of who I became. He totally changed to where I joke sometimes. I'm like, sometimes he's like coaching me through, he's like, oh, this, I'm like, that's what I would say to a client or something. And he's like, he's the one like coaching me through it. I'm like, it's amazing to look at how we both grown. And it's, it takes some work, but it's like, it's going to take that work anyway. Cause like Hannah says, if you leave a relationship or whatever it is, that's still carried with you, right? Because again, this goes back to a lot of this is how we were raised and how we were conditioned and defense mechanisms we brought with us along the way. And now they're going to be there unless we decide to address them.
Yeah. Right. Well, and you have to make a choice. And people think that you do the work once and it's done. And that's not at all. That's not at all that easy.
Right. California, anyone?
Yeah, it's like it's a continuous process. And you are always facing a choice as how you want to move through something. You know, you have to be willing to decide that, you know, your best today is the best that it is. And maybe their best today is the best that it is. And you can't put the meaning on, you know, that's where we really screw ourselves up, is we put the meaning on what we're desiring. And it just complicates everything. And then we're sad and mad because things are not working out for us. So it's definitely putting that work in yourself and seeing those results.
And I have a question for you, Stacia, and well, it probably applies for you too, Hannah, but I know Stacia still has like her young ones with her because I'm not a mom. How does that impact you? And it might be different answers because Hannah, you have a daughter and Stacia, you have boys. So like, how does that impact like the relationship that you have with your kids and like how you're raising them and those conversations that you had?
Well, thankfully, once I started doing the work, I started incorporating the work. So we actually sit and have discussions for, you know, things that are going on and maybe how we could handle things better. And we really talk pretty, you know, for as young as they are, the youngest ones are 10 and 12, we really get in some deep conversations because I want them to realize, you know, when you're a kid, usually you feel like you're just the center of everything. And I really reiterate that, you know, there's a lot going on and you're in control of how you feel about it, but that doesn't mean anything that's going on around you. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I love that because, I know for sure probably none of us got to have those conversations with our parents, right?
No.
Like it was like my way or the highway.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I said
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
We learn to quiet ourselves lower and lower.
Right. I got that children are meant to be seen and not heard.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you think that squashes the spirit of a child a little bit? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
A little bit. But we're unsquashable.
Right?
And
It's like that, and it's in the back of your mind. So when you're having those conversations, like, oh, be quiet, be seen, not heard. Shh.
yeah, and that happened to me for the longest time. But it's interesting how doing the work. So I had a very contentious relationship with my mom when I was growing up, to the point that I literally ended up leaving as soon as I could. And that's not the norm in Mexico, right? I went to the States. I never came back. I've been in the States for over 35 years now, I think. About 35 years now. Incredible how time flies. And so I went and lived my life on my own. But at one point through, when I was married already, and I made a choice. I made a decision.
Mm.
And I understood that my mom at that point, I felt she was older, right? And I'm like, she's old, she's not going to change. And if I want a relationship with my mom, I've got to do the changing.
Mhm.
And I decided I wanted to have my mother in my life, because I could have just walked away and said, well, bye, Mom, I'll never see you again. I know people who've done that.
Mhm.
But I wanted to have my mom present and my dad present in my life. And I knew that if I wanted to have that, I would have to change. But I changed so much so that I say that I've had two different mothers in the same body in one lifetime.
Yeah.
Because the mom that I have today is not, it's so different. Like, it has nothing to do with the mom that I used to have, and the one that raised me, and the one that, was the children are meant to be seen and not heard, and, all these things. And she has literally all the kindness and the love and everything just pours out of her now. And I know that it is because on that day, you remember days, right, in your life when you make these decisions. I remember the day that I said, well, I could easily just go one way or go the other way.
Yeah.
And today I choose my mom. So in order to have her, I'm going to have to make some changes, and I'm going to have to be more flexible, and I'm going to not take things so personally, and still do the work. Because for me, and what I recommend to everyone who is listening, there are lineage patterns that we keep repeating. And we're repeating the same things that our great grandmother did. And then her kid did it, and then her kid did it, and maybe they did it less, but they still did it, and they did it, and they did it, and they did it, and they did it. And the buck stops with me. Yeah. Right? I said, this ends here. And I'm setting myself free. And when I set myself free, not only do I set everybody who comes after me free, but I also set everybody who came before me free. Mm-hmm. And we have the opportunity right here, right now, in this day and age, to make that choice. And we can not only liberate ourselves, but we can liberate everyone in our family. And that is a really cool place to be in. And when we do all that work, and now believe me, I've told you about the work, the way I used to do the work. It was all reliving all the painful drama and trauma, and it was terrible. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to find a way of doing this painlessly. And I'm not going to say that you guys haven't gone through painful, I guess, realizations, and we've shed tears, and we've been angry, and we've expressed all our emotions, but we don't repeat the trauma over and over again, because I believe that attracts more of it.
Right.
right? But there's a way of clearing it so that we can just move on and create different life for ourselves where we don't have to be repeating. Like, has it ever happened to you guys? Like, there's been times where I place my hand somehow, some way on a table or something, or I'll do something with my thumbs, and I freak myself out because I'm like, oh my God, I feel like that's how my grandmother felt. Does that happen to you? Or you look at yourself in the mirror and you're
Yes.
seeing like your grandmother or your mom or like
Or
someone, it's like,
aunt or something. Yeah.
and it's not you,
Mhm.
and it's like, it's freaky.
Yeah.
Like my grandmother would do this with her thumbs. It would be like put her hands down, and wherever she was at her shop on top of the glass display of all her jewelry, whatever, she'd set her hands down and the rolling of the thumb. And one day I was just at the table doing that, and then I saw myself and I was just like, oh my God, that is too freaky.
Yeah.
That's the way genetics work.
Mhm.
And we get imprints, but there are ways of clearing those cellular imprints without any pain, with ease and joy, and with setting new and clear intentions. Clarity is key here. I think we talked about that already, but just getting clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a lot
Definitely.
of times we don't get clear because we feel like what would it matter if I got clear if I still can't have this?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. It's true.
Right? And believe you me, it's like Wayne Dyer said, you have to believe it to see it. Because we live in a world that you have to see it to believe it.
Yeah.
It's like I have to see it. You have to prove it to me. And I have to see it, touch it, feel it. And the way it is, it's the complete opposite.
Opposite.
If you believe it enough, it's just going to come to you. There's no way it won't. Like, basically,
Yes.
you just have to hold steadfast.
Yeah. I think that's such a big takeaway for everyone too. And I'm thinking like the kind of the theme and big takeaway for all three of us here was like that choice and that decision, right? It came from us first, and it wasn't someone telling us we had to do it. It was us deciding. And yeah, there's work with that. I want to show it. I'm gonna do it. And I want to like shout you out for a minute and just like plug Hannah, plug her program, because honestly, everybody who's listening should just like go work with Hannah in some capacity, because I have done healing work with other people, and I had to do that where it was like we went back to the moment the trauma happened and we had to relive it. And I was like, holy shit, I buried this down for a reason, right? Like, I don't want to relive this. But the way that you take, like the process that you take someone through, it's almost like you're like, oh shit, I just healed that. Wait, it's like you didn't even realize what was happening until it happens. And it's, yes, you're still going to feel emotional, have things come up like we do, but it's such a unique way that you do it that I've never experienced, that you feel safe and you feel like you can move through things quicker. And I know that I've healed so many things with you so much faster because I had the capacity to hold space for it. Whereas before it felt so heavy and so draining and almost like I resisted it. Like, and I know I resisted it for a long time. Right. So I'm plugging you for a minute.
Yeah, but what is the point of doing all that work and ending up drained and exhausted and just like cried out, and it's like all the pain coming out, and then you're like dragging yourself for 3 days after you've done
or
healing.
you have to, like, I've done that where I've had to like go take a nap after. I'm like, I'm done. And they warned you too. They're like, you're going to be completely exhausted after this. I'm like, Jesus. And yeah, that works, but this works, and it works better and faster, and you can, have such better outcome from it. So
Right. And then after that, you're like ready to go and have your life, right?
Yeah, it's not looming over you. Like it takes that icky feeling away, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you.
You have a way of, you know, like you said, Sarah, people want you to go through all this trauma and you're not fully doing it because it doesn't feel good. So you're not getting, you know, you're not getting the most out of it, even though you're trudging through all of this junk. But then when we do the work, it's like we see it for something that it is different. Like we see it aside from ourselves, you know, like we don't, so it's easier to answer those hard questions and not be so caught up in it because we're seeing it from such a different perspective when we do it. So it's really incredible how much we have just really healed, especially just since the summer. So
this summer has been really special. But you know, don't sell yourself short because you've been doing the work. I mean, you guys have been working with me for over 2 years now. So at first, and I told you this at the beginning, I said it's going to be like an avalanche, right? It's first we're going to be rolling the snow and it's going to be like a little teeny thing. And then it's going to start getting bigger and then it's going to start getting bigger. But then it's going to get some momentum and it's like this avalanche is going to happen. And it also happened like with the Moon Harvest program, right? Where I was afraid at the beginning. I was like, I don't know if I'm just selling them snake oil because I'm not seeing anything either. It's like, I know it's for real, but I was just like, oh my God, let me see. And at right before the 6-month mark, when I said things would happen, which was the full cycle, the popcorn, right, started to happen. And it's like, ooh, transformation here, transformation here, transformation. And it was just like, ooh, I got one. It was just so amazing. And for me, it's wonderful to see it because as we're going through it, I'm a little bit ahead. And when you get to that point, I've already been there and it's like, holy cow, wait till they get here. Because it's a lot of the times I have to go through it on my own and coach myself through it. But now it's like, I know the way, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
It's so easy. And wait till you get to the other side because it's like really amazing.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's incredible. And just the fact, like, yeah, when you say like 2 years ago, the fact that we're on a podcast together, like 2 years ago, I couldn't have imagined talking about this stuff or having these conversations or, you know, having the confidence to be seen and heard. Right. And not making myself feel smaller, which I'm sure I know we have a whole topic about that too. So maybe it's time unless is there any like last minute, like before we go to our quote of the day, when I like we have this like music quote of the day that comes
we're gonna
echo quote of the day. Stay tuned for a cool graphic. But before we jump to our quote of the day, or maybe you'll be inspired by that, but just like maybe any last minute like tips or advice or just, you know, reminders for our topic today.
Stacia, want to take it from here?
I think my advice would be just to know that you have a choice and you don't have to allow someone to make you feel small, to make you feel like you're not knowledgeable. You can decide that whatever they've said is just whatever they've said, and you can still stand in your own truth. Yeah. So I think it's really important. I don't think that people tap into that and they feel like they have to find this truth outside of themselves, but we all carry that truth within us. And when we really pay attention, we feel it.
Wow. That was beautifully said.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will echo that and also say, that you have a voice, and you get to choose like how you use it and what you say, and when you say things and when you don't, and everything's a choice there on how you share your voice and what you want to share. And my big thing that I want to share is like to not shame or blame ourselves if we don't use our voice and we think we should have, or if we used our voice and we think we shouldn't have. It's like let yourself just acknowledge that it happened, and then look at like, okay, how do I want to express myself going forward, and how would I want to show up differently or to say things differently, or if that exact same situation were to happen, like, why go and beat yourself up like, oh, I should have said this, or should have done that, or done something different. It's like you get to decide in your voice, and even if someone's saying you're wrong, or how did you start that off, Hannah? It was like, listen, little girl, or whatever, like, listen, young lady, or however it was. It's like, my dear, or, condescending things that might come up. Just because someone tries to make themselves seem smarter, bigger, stronger than you doesn't mean their voice matters more than yours. Like, your opinion matters, your voice matters. That's something I've come to really own for myself this year. And I'm very proud of the things that I've done this year that I wouldn't have done before, and I wouldn't have stood up for before, and I wouldn't have said before. And it did come with some backlash, but my voice matters, and what I have to say matters, and how I say it and choose to use it matters. So it's the same for everybody listening. Your voice matters.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And you just sparked something that I think we've done it before, but it's so long ago that it's worth reviewing. And it is, you might like to do it in a fun and easy way, as opposed to making it so heavy and so important, because our voice really matters. But in the whole scheme of things, it doesn't really. It's like it's this paradox, right? It's like it matters, but it's not the end of the world. It is not
like, it's not a make or break situation. I think that's something we do.
Or death.
Yeah.
So and fun way of doing it for me, that it helped me like every year, but you can do it like every month. We should do it every month. You can pick a word.
Yes.
Means something. Remember we did that.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was like grace or elegance. And it's like, okay, I'm choosing grace. And so how can I act gracefully? How can I give someone grace? How can I give myself some grace?
Yes.
Right? Or elegance, right? Or what was the word that I love that people would get so mad at me? Opulence. People would get so mad at me for doing opulence. And I'm like, I like opulence. What can I tell you? And people would be like, you're so materialistic. And I'm like, if you read the dictionary and get the full meaning of the word opulence, you wouldn't be yelling at me. But that's another theme for another podcast. But pick a word, pick a word daily, right? And practice how to be more graceful. Poise. How can you walk with more poise? How can you show up with more poise, right? Or open-heartedness, or assertiveness, or a word, and live guided by that word on that day, and see how it feels. Try it on for size, and see how much different you act when you pick a word such as, elegance, poise, whatever. If you feel like you're not confident enough, assertive.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be confident, because then it's like, it's almost like affirmations that they don't work, but that's also another topic.
Yeah, that's a whole.
Write it down, Sarah.
Why do I have it on here? It's going on the list just in case.
Affirmations suck and they don't work.
Oh my gosh.
real meaning of what I'm saying soon. But you pick a word, and if you're living from that word on that day,
Mhm.
notice yourself like walking differently
Yeah.
and showing up differently. And then you're going to get reflected back, the reflection of that word,
Yes, exactly.
right? Because when you're giving grace, chances are you're going to get that grace right back
Right.
to you exponentially.
Yes.
I love that. Wonderful. All right. Let's
All right.
do our quote of the day.
I had a couple picked out, but I think that this one is really kind of perfect because it sums up everything that we talked about. And this is something that Colette Baron Reed brought up in her Oracle Palooza, but this is actually a quote from Brene Brown. Do you know who that is?
Brene Brown?
Brene Brown. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. She said, you either walk inside of your story and own it, or you stand outside of your story and hustle for your worthiness. And so that just really seemed on point, that
I'd say, yeah.
Why am I not surprised? And why am I surprised?
I know. Same here.
But yeah, we've just got to know that we have that power. We can't give away that power. It's, if you give that power away, then you're going to be fighting to get it back. So just owning where you're at and being comfortable enough to own it instead of letting all of that junk hold on to us. So
that's awesome. I love that. Station. This is why Station's our quote lady. Oh my gosh.
Perfection. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for listening. And if you have comments or anything, feel free to leave them. Go work with Hannah because she's going to heal everything for you.
Everything.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here. We'll see you guys on the next episode.
Bye.
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 Thank you for tuning in to The Ripple Effect by the Alliance with Hannah Martinez,
Stacia Stove.
And Sarah Jane Lita. We hope you're now vibing high and ready to create your own ripple.
Drop a comment or email to let us know the ripple effect that you are creating.
Music by our very own Hannah Martinez and music production by Onel Moulet.
Follow us on Instagram at The Ripple Effect Pod for more high vibration content. Please rate and review us wherever you listen. Until next time.